Gaming, comics, and film seem to have suffered the same fate in the West. More accurately, they seem to have the same problems. We can argue all day long about where the problem stems from and what caused it, but the outcome is the outcome. I do feel like it's important to recognize what got us here so that the same mistakes aren't repeated. But one thing is constant no matter what entertainment industry it is. We agree that there seems to be a massive disconnect between the general target audience and the creators or IP holders. Though not exclusively the case, some of this is due to the obsession with modern day politics or social issues, and it doesn't mean that they are specifically creating things with those efforts in mind, though that absolutely happens. It's just that when you lead with it or you're blinded by it, it begins to impact the creative process at about every level. The result is the creators eventually lose sight of what made a property great and how their number one goal is to entertain. The point of this video isn't to blackpill you. I'm actually very optimistic, but we need to be honest about what's taking place. Some want a return to form, but what does that look like? Well, once upon a time when a movie, comic, or video game dropped, we weren't having the discussions that we're having right now. People liked and disliked things, but it was all in fun. People would still even nerd out about things that they found to be unfavorable. We weren't discussing the political or social views of the creators, and those conversations existed on the fringe. Now we're discussing this with just about every form of media that drops. We're even talking about it more than its contents. This is how Western media got into this mess, but also why there will never be a return to form. For starters, we live in a different era of communication. I'm biased and I think that the West really peaked in the 90s, but that was in the very early stages of the internet. It wasn't that widely available, nor was it primarily the way people consumed media. You had the newsstand, television ads, and word of mouth. The fear of missing out was really the fear of missing out. Now people have many computers in their pockets and are constantly connected. Let's be honest, things are easily spoiled, people have no problems pirating, and it's so easily accessible. And now people are itching to get their opinions out there first. The magic that previous generations had with the organic spread of media is gone. People that lived through those eras are nostalgic for an era that will never return at a mass level. It can't be replicated, and though technological advancements were our greatest gift, in this regard, it was an unfortunate curse. Which brings me to my next point. Social media was the death of the superstar. This especially applies to Hollywood. Part of the charm was the mystique. With the growth of social media, especially after the orange guy won, the mystique was eliminated. They tell on themselves through their posts and interactions now. While it has been used as an advantage for the more personable people, it had an opposite effect on them. It turns out they're unlikable and they despise half of the voting population. And with the wealth of entertainment out there, people aren't rushing to spend money on their productions anymore. Sure, they'll still make a lot of money, but there aren't as many slam dunks anymore. And third is just the general mega corporate structure. A lot of them are stuck in their ways and still operating on the same legacy model that's slightly updated. The problem is not just buyer habits have changed. Creator habits have changed as well. This has become so obvious with legacy news and political commentary. They can't even compete with the viewership of some guy in his bedroom or home studio covering the same subjects. As more time passes, more people are adopting these habits, and that's why the mainstream does not hold as much of a market share as they once did in years past. But they still oddly operate as if they do. Their obsession with things that have nothing to do with what they're creating started to pile up the cost. Movie and game budgets are completely out of control right now, and because the companies are so massive and stuck in their ways, it's nearly impossible for them to pivot. Any change they have will take years to get to the audience. And this is aside from the social views and politics of the creators and leaders. That just adds to it. Sure, if you have grown up with some IP that a mega corporation is now in control of, it may pain you to see that property get ran into the ground. This is why I think we need to get over that, but it's also why I'm optimistic about the future. With the tools we now have at our disposal, we're overdue for a Western creative renaissance. I mean, new properties that are going to cross generations and stand the test of time. If you look at the mainstream, you might think that costs are going up with comics, gaming, and TV. The reality is that the means have been made more affordable and the barrier of entry has been lowered. We need creators to create instead of us dwelling so much on properties that are older than your grandmother. The mainstream plays by a completely different set of rules, from their creative process to how they're funded and banking. This is not something you should try to copy because you can't do it anyway. We live in a different age. Instead of trying to be the next old thing, creators can just focus on being the best version of themselves. That said, I think that people need to understand this important thing. As things get more decentralized due to the opportunity, I think we have to move beyond analyzing success through box office and traditional means. Back in the gap, mainstream entertainment monopolized the proper channels. This is where all of the consumers would go. Now they can go wherever they want, so while a project may not have $1 billion box office, it doesn't mean that it wasn't a success. So the money will still flow into these industries, but it'll be a lot more spread out. In American comics, for example, there will never be another big two. It'll be more like a small to medium 500 with varying profitability and success. Teams will be smaller, owners will have skin in the game, and they'll be able to connect directly with their customers. So I'm actually stoked about independent comics, games, and film. There's going to be some ambitious people out there giving it a shot, just as I did with the Rippaverse. When you see the next big property disappoint you, there's no reason to be black-pilled about the future. Just get used to operating as if the other forms of mega corporate entertainment is just as legitimate. Thanks for watching. Be sure to head over to rippaverse.com to check out our comic book company. We have books, plenty of merchandise, and even some glorious animations from Rippaverse Studios.